Hi, this is Eric Durack, and welcome to this edition of Med Health Fit, the TV show that integrates wellness and healthcare. And tonight we have a special guest. We have Ms. Glynis Palazuelos, who is the president of GPS Functional Nutrition here in Santa Barbara. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much.
So, functional nutrition, functional medicine, functional exercise, functional rehabilitation. Functional is a word that's sort of in our lexicon these days for things with health promotion in medicine. Where do you sort of fit into that? How did your functional nutrition practice sort of get started here in town?
Well, it started a long time ago in my youth. My mother was from Europe, and all the foods that we ate in our house were all cooked and bought fresh from the farms. Luckily, we were living in California. And there were never any snacks in the house. We never ate potato chips. We never had sodas. I mean, we really learned to just enjoy fresh, healthy, nutritious foods. Mm-hmm. When we were ill, we didn't really rush to the doctor. There was, my mother would get out a diet book and figure out how to heal people. What type of foods would we need to make us bring our health back?
And so you're sort of coming full circle from your mom's recipes per se, or her functional cooking, to how you can actually take some of that information and that knowledge and that sort of wisdom of the ages to your clientele, correct?
Yeah, I think what it did was it made me feel empowered that I could really take care of myself and then take care of my health. Mm-hmm. And I want to help other people achieve that. I want people to bring their power back to themselves, to be able to heal themselves, to be able to investigate, to be aware in their bodies, how their bodies are feeling mm-hmm. with whatever they're eating, to start getting a connection.
Did you learn some of this in your education programs, or, and let me sort of rephrase the question, did you start with the sort of your mom's foundation, and then you learned some information in your certificate program or your education program, and then you combined the two? Am I going down the right road here?
I think it was just an evolution, yeah. I mean, I saw how powerful it was growing up as a healing modality. And I think that I started becoming aware of Chinese medicine and mm-hmm. Ayurveda. And I mean, these are practices, I think Ayurveda is 5,000 years old, Chinese medicine is 3,000 years old. I mean, these are proven modalities of healing.
Right. Well, it's interesting because we've had an Ayurvedic practitioner on the show, and of course a good friend of mine and colleague is Dr. Roger Yonka here in town, who's one of the top Chinese medicine people, in the world. I mean, he really knows his stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you and I talked a little bit before the show got going, about Facebook and how there's good things and bad things about it. But I read an interesting quote on Facebook recently, within the last 6-8 months, that said healthcare starts in your kitchen. And I thought that was such a great thing, because there is a whole generation of people who have no idea where eggs come from. They don't know where eggs come from. They come from the store.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or that eating white breads and white pastries is perfectly fine, and they have no awareness of what it does to the body mm-hmm. and what it does to your energy level and how it affects you. Mm-hmm.
Well, on your website, you talk about nutrition and healing. And when we spoke recently, you talked about the types of foods that you have. You talked about like the 3 tiers or the 3 pillars of how your practice is. So
the 3 tiers. Basically it's again, it's back to just really becoming aware of what the food is doing to your body. So the first thing is to remove all the foods that are affecting your body, irritating your stomach or causing inflammation. Arthritis is an inflammation from, too much sugar and too much goopy white breads, et cetera, et cetera. And, just becoming really aware of everything that you put into your body. How is that affecting you? Taking the time to really stop after a meal, an hour, 2 hours, and really check in with your body to see what's going on. Is your energy low? Do you have a foggy brain? Or is it affecting your stomach? So start removing all of those foods that are irritating our bodies.
Okay, so let me do a case report. So I'm a client of yours, and you say, hey, you're eating Pop-Tarts and Cheerios for breakfast. So we're going to remove those two things from breakfast, and we're going to have you eat this. And this may be eggs. This may be a protein something, or you know what I mean. So you're changing, like chicken something for or chicken patty or something like that for breakfast. So I'm having protein as opposed to this sugary cereal or Pop-Tarts or other type of pancakes even. You know what I mean?
Right.
And these things are like staples of American diet.
I know.
I mean, could you imagine not having waffles and French toast at IHOP? I mean, that's like sacrilegious. But I look at the amount of those foods that people eat, and of course, a lot of these things are all you can eat, which is another terrible interjection into the American dietary thing. Is all you can eat, the buffet. Go up to the buffet 10 times. That should be outlawed, but that's just my opinion.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
That's a whole other topic about restaurants and foods and all these
and
kinds of things.
And
waste. I have spoken about that with other guests on the show about just the amount of food that Americans waste every day. I was in shock when I heard a YouTube presentation that restaurants and grocery stores throw away almost 35% of their food every day. Because the bananas are too curled.
Wow.
Or whatever. And I'm like, this is insanity. Like, well, the apples don't look all perfectly red. And I'm like, well, that's what organic apples look like all the time. You go to the farmer's market here in town and they don't look perfect, but boy, do they taste good.
Right.
And so this is what we are programmed, not you and I, but most people are programmed that, well, that apple's got to be perfectly red, and that banana just has to have a slight curl.
Yeah.
And I just think that it is...
We're doing a disservice to ourselves.
No, you said disturbed, and I was going to say that a lot of these people who make these rules, whether it's the USRDA and this is the irony, is that your banana literally has to be curved only a certain amount. If bananas are curled too much, you can't, you have to throw them away, or whatever the case may be. But you can put red dye number 5 in your meat to make it look like it's kind of blood and all that kind of.
They wax the apples. Just think about biting into an apple with wax on it, and that goes into our bodies.
Well, luckily for me, and I'm sure luckily for you, living in Santa Barbara, we have an apple tree in our backyard, so we know where our apples come from, and we buy apples from, the farmer's market until they're out of season, and we know how they look.
Yes.
And some of them don't
how
look
they're
perfect,
supposed to look.
But they taste really, crunchy and snappy and tart and all that kind of. It's just delicious. Yeah. And so, I'm spoiled when I go back to Michigan to visit relatives. Anyway, okay. So you talked about your 3 tiers, removing.
So removing the obstacles, the irritants that are causing
the types of foods.
Yes, the types of foods, and it's going to be different from everyone. There are people that have fructose intolerance. Right. They can't even eat fruit. So then you have to kind of add in a bit more vegetables or figure out what type of fruits you can eat that aren't going to irritate you. Some
and
people
then you reintroduce certain things over time, or
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Because we don't want our bodies to become deficient from taking everything away.
Okay.
So we want to give our bodies time to heal, and then we want to start bringing things back in. But as we bring things back in, they're going to be a bit healthier. We're going to start changing your taste for certain things.
Interesting. One of the other things that we spoke about, and we had a great conversation on the phone the other day, was fatigue. And I'm going to tell you, interesting, today I read that a researcher from Stanford has developed a biological blood test to look at what he calls a fatigue marker. So there's some sort of a chromosome or something on the cell or whatever that he's noticed that people who have very high levels of fatigue or chronic fatigue syndrome actually exhibit this element in the blood at higher levels. So he's all excited. Their lab is all excited that they've discovered this thing, and I think it's important. But fatigue is one of those things that I think, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but with good sleep, meditation, and a change in the diet, you might be able to reverse most of that.
I totally agree. I think we're all burning ourselves out, exercising way too much, thinking that that's a good thing, when in fact it's burning our cells out. And we're not getting enough, we're not quieting our minds enough. And of course, we're not eating enough. People are on all these crazy diets thinking that taking the food away is going to make them thinner. But it's actually what type of food are you putting in your body.
Right. Well, and it makes sense. But one of the things with the fatigue issue, and this is one of the things we spoke at some length about your recommendation for specific types of supplements, and I was just excited to know that you do recommend certain vitamins and supplements based on a person's condition.
Yeah, well, we have adaptogens right off the top.
And give me an example of an adaptogen.
The ginsengs.
Okay.
And those are going to be good for stress. We have ashwagandha, also something good for stress. Bacopa, good for the mind. These are all wonderful herbs, and they're a classification of supplements now called nootropics. Have you heard of nootropics?
I have not heard. Ooh, I have to write that down.
N-O-O tropics.
And it's interesting that it sounds like an island in the South Pacific.
I know. It's a
Glynis, we're going to go to nootropics. but what are they specifically? They're a class of.
They are a class of herbs and supplements. For actually, another word for the nootropics is smart brain. So they're all about helping the brain against or heal against fog, lapses of memory. As our brains age, they're losing their ability to function as well. So these supplements are helping to bring this energy back.
But and everybody used to say when I was a kid, oh, your grandparents, they're just getting old. Well, my one grandfather smoked and drank for 50 years. My other grandfather had diabetes for half of his adult life, had his leg amputated. I mean, it was very, very interesting. And I see both of them. Like my one grandfather was 76 when he passed away. Then my other grandfather was 90. So he, one would say, well, he lived a long life, but they just had these chronic disease things. And I think a lot of it was too much alcohol when they were younger, cigarettes, cigars, whatever they did back in the 30s and 40s, and it catches up with you. And without having the nutrition supplements, what I see, and I'm going to ask you to elaborate on this if my hypothesis is correct, that if you do damage to yourself when you're younger, you may have the steady state, but you get to maybe 70, 75, 80, and all of a sudden you start going off the cliff. Unless you can get in supplements, herbs, etc., at a particular time. And we're going to talk about these specific diets in our next question, but in terms of the supplements, do you think that there is a relationship between the amount and the type you take and better brain function later in life? Or is it too early to tell? Is this a?
I think that taking the supplements can help people that are already declining, because I think that they're bringing back a nutrition to give food to the cells to help regenerate them.
I believe that.
And by the way, my mother is 94, still lives alone, takes care of her half-acre home, and she's in great shape. No health problems.
Well, my mother-in-law is 95 years old, and she has a Seagram 7 on the rocks every day at 3 o'clock. So
you see, they know how to live.
Well, and I got to tell you, there's something, even though nutritionally, she's woken up every day the last 50 or 60 years with coffee and toast, and that's really been her breakfast. But I got to tell you, she had a tremendous life, even growing up during the Depression, because her family owned a restaurant. She ate well. They made money. They sold a restaurant in the 40s. They did pretty well. And I just look at the lifestyle that they had, and I think that, if your lifestyle is pretty good, if you don't have to worry about money, your kids are all healthy, whatever, life is pretty good, then I think that stress, she never had a ton of stress in her life.
Yeah, stress is detrimental.
Okay, so nootropics, smart brain, mineral supplements, etc. But one of the other things that we spoke about was the whole issue of diet. And we talked about the Mito diet and the keto diet and the paleo diet, which all have one thing in common. They're higher in fats and they're higher in proteins. And I asked you sort of what your opinion was, and you didn't, favor one versus the other. But why do you think that they're all so popular today?
I think because they're a great stepping off point for people that they can grasp, that they're filled with the vegetables, the proteins, the good fats, as you're saying, the fruits, things that people need a roadmap. They've gotten so far away from knowing what good food is anymore. They don't even know how to eat properly. So these 3 diets actually give them a very wonderful foundation for them to step off on.
That's interesting, because I've never actually heard, I have heard people say, well, you don't want too many fruits, or you don't want any of this processed, or you don't want this or the other thing. And then they talk about, like I say, having chicken strips for breakfast with your salad or whatever. And I'm not opposed to that, but the paleo diet is essentially, this is a very strict diet that you're going to follow. You got the calories, you're not going to go hungry, but this is what you're going to eat. But I've never heard anybody actually talk about it as a roadmap to really changing a lifestyle component, which I think is interesting.
I think people are really floundering right now, not knowing what they should be eating and not eating.
I really think that you and I are the generation where McDonald's and Burger King and all these fast food restaurants came. Before that, you went to a sit-down restaurant and somebody actually prepared a nice meal. And now, everything is the double-double and the fries and the this and the that. And I think that
gluttony.
You just have it's all you can eat.
Yeah.
So,
and we need to get back to moderation. Really taking a cue from, again, that awareness in our bodies.
Now, your counseling practice here in town is interesting, because you use the word with me, concierge practice.
Yes.
And so you use blood tests, you go directly to people's homes, and you sort of scout around their kitchen. Elaborate on that. Tell us that, how that concierge mindset works.
Well, it's going to people's homes and being in a comfortable environment that they're used to. It's starting to explore what's in their cupboards, what's in the refrigerator, how are they cooking, what oils are they using to cook.
And a lot of people don't do that. And I'm not certainly pointing a finger at dietitians or whatever, but when you're in a clinic and you're talking to people about foods, you might have some samples, or you may have some, pieces of paper or something. But I think that going through a person's home is like, well, why are you purchasing this? And let me see if there's a substitute that we can use, and sort of kind of like cleaning house with them.
Yeah, really, yeah. I mean,
anybody ever kick you out?
no, not yet.
That's my wine. You can't take that. Anyway, and we actually talked about blood tests, and I told you that I had a guest on the show last year, Dr. Craig Brandman, who had an online blood lab company. And I'm going to quote what I said to you on the phone the other day, that 90% of physicians' decisions for their patients are based on the results of blood labs. And I think for somebody like you, I mean, you could make such amazing changes in someone's health status by, yes, the food, and by coming into their kitchen and cooking and things, but also knowing what their blood work is.
Well, again, that's a bit of a roadmap too. I mean, you really kind of get to know like where the weaknesses are. Is the liver having problems? Is it sluggish? Or, and that gives you kind of, that's part of that 3-tier where you can kind of go a little bit deeper into understanding someone's body.
Right. Well, and I think it's great. And I mentioned on the phone that I'm trying to get personal trainers and health coaches to understand about basic foundational blood work, because I feel that they could make good inroads with training clients based on blood work. Many, many years ago when I worked with diabetics, the exercise program was what we called blood sugar dependent. If someone came to you in the afternoon and their blood sugar was 97, you're not going to put them on the treadmill for 30 minutes at full speed, because they're going to bottom right out. So you may feed them something, take another blood sugar, and then do a moderate program that day. So that's the foundation of how they would exercise. And it sounds like this is something you do all the time, whether you know the blood work or not. You have other factors that you look at to build that foundation to get them to the next thing. Do you specialize in weight loss?
I work with weight loss. I'm actually kind of fascinated with the brain right now, and building it up, and the different avenues of, lack of energy or lack of drive or memory loss or foggy brain or...
There's an online Dr. Greg Hyman who is very well versed on LinkedIn. And he actually wrote an article recently about weight gain and sleep, or weight gain and fatigue. He said there's a very high correlation between how little sleep you get and how difficult it is to lose weight.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
I had no idea.
Well, I think we're just burning out our bodies, and our bodies aren't knowing like what to do. And I think it's having a hard time metabolizing. We need to get back to this rhythm, and like what you're saying, get into a sleep cycle. Get to bed early, relax before bed, turn off the computer, stop looking at your Facebook or YouTube, and let your mind stop and slow down, and let your whole body go into a sleep mode.
And that's something you talk about as part of your concierge thing. It's the functional nutrition, but the nutrition has to be part of a triad, as far as I'm concerned. The exercise, the relaxation, and the food, that's sort of my...
Yes, definitely.
And I used to be really good at relaxation. I remember I used to meditate a lot when I was in grad school or whatever, and I got my heart rate down in the 40s.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, I'll do good now. Are you kidding? These days,
You're on the go?
I'm on the go a lot more.
I can work with you.
I'm sure you can, and I'm sure we probably will. One of the things that I told you about is that I have this whole new group of professional friends now who sat in that chair, and it is it's a great experience, because I've been in Santa Barbara a long time, over 30 years, and there's been a core group of people who I knew, trainers, people from some of the health clubs, some of the folks from Cottage Hospital when I worked up, but that was it. And when I first came to town, there were like 3 or 4 health clubs. I have a friend of mine who's a personal trainer in town. There's 112 health clubs in Santa Barbara now.
Oh my goodness.
And there's like 5 being built. It's just crazy how much, but you know what? I think if more people want to exercise, that's good.
They should be
but things have
outside.
changed.
I mean,
I know.
Look
And I
at
say
the
that
mountains,
to myself.
the ocean, the beaches.
I know, but for me, I like I go to one, actually Tony Calhoun from AC4 sat in that chair, and he owns 2 health clubs in town, and there a few times a week, that's part of the routine, and it keeps me, I really enjoy the process. I like those gyms. I've got a couple folks that I just like to, kind of my daily thing.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends I get out. I did a big bike ride
Wonderful.
yesterday, and I try to get
Mix
all of
it
that
up.
stuff, mix it up, track, all those kinds of things. I do try to mix it up, but I also understand the constraints. But as you're going, so we've got a couple minutes to go here. My last question. Is there any person, you don't have to mention a name, but like a success story, that someone has come to you, I need to lose 70 pounds, or I am just completely burned out? What have you done with them?
Well, boy, yes, I have a case. I'm still working with this lady. She is addicted to the Diet Cokes, artificial sweeteners, sugar, big addiction to sugar. And it's been a really slow process, but it's fascinating to hear her talk about, oh, this cookie doesn't taste good anymore, or, craving more vegetables and more fruits. And her breakfasts have changed, where she's eating eggs and actually vegetables in the morning. And she's lost 50 pounds already.
Good for you. Good for her.
And yes, good for her. And has lowered her blood pressure. So she's backing down on her blood pressure medicines.
That's an entirely episode we could talk about.
Well, it's all about, and it's all in the food, just changing.
Well, and you mentioned in one of the things, your patient empowerment. So out of your concierge, one of the things you do is try to empower those people. And
Yes.
I mean, 50 pounds that's big.
Yes.
That's really big.
And really, she's doing the work. I'm just guiding her.
You're just guiding. Well, and I think that, with functional nutrition, a lot of this has to do with the relationship that you build with clients. Is that correct?
Oh, they definitely need to feel safe and supported. Yes.
All right, so from nootropics to herbs and supplements to these fancy diets that you have a basis pretty much in all of them. And we're coming to the end here. All of your information has been on the screen the whole time.
Oh, wonderful.
So, but give us your website again.
So it's gpsfunctionalnutrition.com.
All right, so for Glynis Palazuelos and your GPS Functional Nutrition, this is Eric Durack for medhealthfit.com. Thanks for being on the show, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on MedHealthFit.
Thank you.